So it's a new day and a new campaign awaits. Either you or your game master has decided to set up a session zero. Well, what's that all about? My name is Don. I'm trying to be the sly strategist, and let's go ahead and get into that. Now, I am not going to say that there is a definitive guide on what should be in a session zero. I know what I've seen, I know what I like to have, and I know what I plan on putting in my session zeros as I go forward. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I want to take this from two different experiences, from a player standpoint and from the game master standpoint. Now, if you're a player, one of the things you should know before you start your session zero, and you can get this from the group, is how far into character creation you should be. Some people like to do character creation before it even starts, and some like to do the character creation there at the table in session zero. That's a good thing to know beforehand. I usually like to have a few ideas kind of mixed in, ready to go to flesh out a little bit further, but that just varies upon your group and what the rules of your specific table you're going to be going to are. So that's a good thing to know. One of the reasons why you might not want a fully fleshed out character is it helps for you to share what your character details are, what you're thinking about doing, and how that relates to everybody else in the group. If you have a full party of marshals with no healing whatsoever, or a completely charisma-based group, it could work. This is your adventure. This is your campaign, and this is your idea of fun. And all those things could definitely work. But if you are looking for a more balanced party or a more balanced experience that might make everything go a little bit smoother, this would be a good point to know all the character details. Kind of leapfrogging off the character details part of it are the backstories. You can work on your backstories at the table with the group. You know, it might be fun to play a group of people who have known each other since they were children. It might be fun to even do a little level 0 character in order to role play a little bit of what it was like growing up together. It's also fun to sometimes have 2 or 3 characters who have known each other before the group got together. They might have a shared secret. They might have a shared goal. It could be something that doesn't come up until 6 months into the campaign. But these little things add texture, and they add fun, and they add excitement to what is a story on paper that you are going to be going through. And it brings a little bit of life into the whole experience. So at your session zero as a player, just be prepared to be flexible. If you really want to play a specific class or specific type of character, that's fine. Work with the group in order to get everybody what they want to play. So, take that for what it is. Now, for session zero, a lot of the responsibility falls on the game master. So I'm going to cover a little bit more on the game master side of it and what I feel a game master should have prepared and be ready to talk about. So the first thing is how and where to play. If you're playing live, you're going to need a location, you're going to need a time, you're going to need the logistics of the rooms and when people need to get there. A super important thing here is snacks. Snacks are always important. When you have people who are all going to a location that is no longer their house, it's, like it or not, it's important. I think it is anyways. If you're going to be using maps and miniatures, if so, who brings that? The GM will probably do the map himself, but are you responsible to bring your own miniatures, or will you be using a set that the game master has? These are all things that you might need to know before you actually start. And then there might be no visual aids whatsoever. It all might be theater of the mind. This should be something that should be established before you start an actual session 1. If you're doing virtual, it's whether you're using a virtual tabletop or not, what type of virtual tabletop you're using. You could be using Roll20 or Owlbear Rodeo or Foundry. There are various different virtual tabletops out there, and they all work a little bit different. So at this point, it'd be a good idea to share the login information, what website they need to go to, if people should show up a few minutes early so that they can set up new character things. They should also know what to do in case the system is down. Also, if you're not using a virtual tabletop at all, and if you are, actually, it kind of works both ways, is how are you going to talk? Are you going to be using what I've always used? Truthfully, I haven't played in a virtual table that uses anything different, but Discord? Are you going to be using Teams? Are you going to be using Zoom? I know Foundry does have a voice and video feature. I've never used it, but these are things that need to be established in that session 0 and make sure everybody is set up and ready to go for that session 1. So you're not just learning a new system in that session 1 and waste your it is no waste. I never want to say it's a waste, but you're using that time inefficiently, and it could be done in the session 0. Another big important things is how we are going to play as a group, what those expectations are, and how we are going to treat each other. It's good to set up those boundaries at the beginning. You can go as far into this as you want or not if you don't want to, but it is a good idea to set aside what these tools you might have in order to handle any issues, be it X cards or lines and fails, be it side conversations with the GM, and how the GM is going to handle, heavy word, but how the GM is going to handle violations of these. Is it going to be called out in front of the group? Is it going to be a side conversation? I have never seen a call out in the middle of a group, and I probably wouldn't suggest it. That could lead to people actually quitting the game. So I might step away from that, but I would do a side conversation with the person in order to try and kind of bring everything back together, get them to a group. Is there a certain amount of violations before that person can no longer play with the group? So these are things that should be handled at the beginning so that no one's surprised later on. There are things like how to handle player absences. If it is a short-term absence, like someone just can't make a meeting or they're going to be an hour or 2 hours late, is the GM going to play that character? Is the player going to be going to the store for milk and bread during that part of the adventure? Is another player character going to play that person's character? These things should be established. Also, what the levels are for how many absences are too much. If you have a 3 or 4 person party, if 2 people aren't there, it might just be worth it to postpone that gaming session until everybody's available. And if you are the GM, you should also establish whether you are willing to play a player character, because sometimes it's hard to play the character when you know the whole backstory. And if you are playing the player character, establish how interactive you're going to be with the group. I wouldn't suggest helping them solve puzzles or clues or things along those lines, aside from being a mechanical implement, but that is up to everybody's GM and everybody's table. So these are things that should be established. One other thing that should be brought up is how to handle XP and leveling. Are you going to be leveling through experience points? Are you going to be leveling through milestones? Tying back to the last point, if someone cannot make a session, are they going to forfeit all experience for that session? And if they're using a milestone system, do they still get the full access to the new level because of the milestone? Especially with the milestone system, I can't see that being a problem, allowing the person to just level up with the rest of his compatriots because they missed one session. But it is something to establish at the beginning so there's no confusion later on. The last thing you want to do is to be 3-4 months into a session and then have people upset because they weren't aware of what a future rule might be. You can't account for everything that's going to happen in the future, but try to account for what you can. What rules are being played? Are you going to be doing certain homebrew rules that you like on your particular tables? Are there going to be variant rules that you want to use? Are people going to be using free archetypes? Are they going to be using a different character creation system? Just these are things to establish at the beginning so that it isn't introduced by surprise later. If things do get introduced later, that's fine as long as everybody is in agreement, but it is good to get those things down first. And then one other thing I would say for the GM is to kind of talk to the players and determine what their preferred play style is. As a GM has their own play style. They have what they like to do. Some GMs will love to do a different voice for every single character and role play the whole interaction out, even if that person just wants to buy a potion of healing and it turns into a 20-minute thing. And the players at the table might love that, and that's totally fine. Where some players would rather have a trip to the merchant to be a transactional thing where you present me a list of things that's there, and I say I want 3 of these, 2 of these, 4 of these. I take the money off my chart, my little character sheet, and I'm on my way. So establish if this is a role-playing campaign we're going to be playing, or whether this is an action campaign we're playing. If there are puzzles, how many do the players even like doing puzzles? Are they good at puzzles? Is that going to cause a 2 or 3 session logjam because the people can't get past that puzzle? It isn't necessarily to totally change your whole campaign and the story you want to say and tell. However, you might be able to tailor certain things, maybe plan for hints for the puzzles you have in the future. If a particular group doesn't like puzzles at all, I wouldn't suggest just giving players everything or going a full action campaign. You might as well play a video game at that point, especially if you're on a virtual tabletop, because then you just have a person narrating the results to you if you're just doing a full action campaign. But it's just something to consider and make sure that you can create the most enjoyment for everyone at the table, for the players and for you receiving less flack from the players because you've given them their 9th puzzle in a row and they are done. I guess there's maybe one other thing I'd like to say is that for the session 0, it is handy to, if you're using an adventure path or one of the prepared adventures, to go ahead and make sure everybody has read the player's guide for that particular adventure, or give them that so that they're ready for session 1. If you are doing a wholly created campaign, then this would be when you pitch that campaign to the players. Make sure that everybody's aware of what the backstory is, what their goals are. If there are certain people within the town that they're going to need to interact with, they aren't going in blind and you drop them in the middle of a town square and say, okay, start. So think of this as you pitching your idea to the players so that they understand and know what they're getting into. And everybody's different. I'm going to tell no one what to do or what is right or wrong, but maybe they'll come up with a good idea that you didn't think of so you can bring into the campaign. So these little conversations are all good to have. Once again, I don't think there's a specific definition of a session 0, but this is what I like to see. This is what I've seen already and what I've really enjoyed. I can't say that I've ever had a bad session 0. And if I ever did get into a brand new campaign, especially with brand new people, and there wasn't a session 0, I'd be a little bit weirded out because do we just show up and start rolling? Little things to consider. But once again, we're going to close on that. So I do thank you for sitting through this video. I hope you were able to find something that will help you out maybe in the future from this video here. And if you liked it, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and hit that like. I would really appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to say have a good day and happy adventuring. Thanks.